You're on Zoom. I have mom's iPhone on Zoom and John Allwine on Zoom. This is like quite an audience that we have on Zoom, which is amazing, which is really, really good. I'm just having Caleb get us set up that we can record, and
it's recording.
We're recording. All right. Yeah. We've been for 9 years. I think you just started. Yeah. And maybe it's a live story. Yeah. Very short here. Really introducing right from the beginning. Swelling the voice. Here. This.
Oh,
And we're here.
instead of up there, it's probably it's for like a theater. It's three. Oh, you're seeing like moving.
Yeah, we've everything. All right, bear with us, guys. We're gonna get started here in just a minute. If you are on Zoom with us, can you tell me if you can hear me? Just put it in the chat, or come on video and show me your face. Can you guys hear it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know I'm freaking bored too, so
Yeah. I want to know who's on mom's phone.
yeah.
Curiosity has the best of me. Who's mom?
Yeah, maybe the taste.
On video. That's okay.
Yeah, and you're throwing the voice. This time.
Friday night I was working.
So apparently there's the thought.
I like it,
They weren't there.
but yeah, any suggestions, you can give me a minute.
Ask fine.
Be that, and I'm gonna be the person.
Caleb,
But it explains.
Caleb, can you help Taisha with some finance questions she has? Hi. Hi.
It's fine, it's fine, it's fine.
You dropped off.
All right. We're gonna get rolling. Move on up, move on up, move on up, move on up. Pretty please. Please.
Oh,
Please. Join. Join us. The show is too long.
Hi there.
All right, so we have.
Do I actually need a microphone?
Only for.
When did you get started? But for the.
For those. Is that okay?
Yes, it's fine.
You okay with that? All right. Well, welcome. Oh, welcome.
You're fine. You're fine. She just said it.
You're fine, great. It's fine. Everything's fine.
I need that shirt. Like I made it for because it's always been my mantra. It's my last month.
It's fine. Everything's fine. All right, welcome. We are so excited to have you guys here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that this was sort of a requested class that had come up from one of the agent small groups, right? Because this is something that has been coming up time and time again in deals that you guys are seeing.
Right.
And it's something that, quite honestly, the market hasn't really given our new agents a lot of experience in dealing with, because we weren't in an inspection heavy market for such a long time, right? So here we are, we now have inspections happening, and new agents aren't sure how to handle it, what to do. And so we thought who better to ask than our seasoned agents, our experienced agents. So we have some talking points. Just know we have some questions, and yet we're open to discussion. So please don't be afraid to raise your hand. I'm going to be monitoring the chat on Zoom as well. So I encourage Zoom participants, if you come across questions you have, just let us know. All right. First things first, and I think that I've heard all three of you talk about how important it is anytime you're working with a client to set expectations. So let's start at the beginning when you're working with your buyers or your sellers. Talk to me a little bit about what it looks like to set clear expectations.
First, so
My experience is probably a little bit unique compared to these ladies simply because I am on a team. And so the way that we handle inspections at times is maybe a bit different. Sometimes it's just me solo handling them depending on the situation and my relationship with that client. Other times it's our transaction coordinators that are licensed and they're on every agreement that we write as a designated agent. So it's really important from the very beginning when, whether it's you or whether it's your transaction coordinator or another licensed agent that you partner with, because I know there's also some agents in the brokerage that work that way where they have partners and they kind of go back and forth between the two of them, that your client knows who they're going to be talking with throughout the inspection period, what that person's level of experience is. And again, most of you are probably going to be working with that person directly yourself. So you want to set the expectations of what the contract says for the timeline of the inspections. Almost every situation is probably a resale. You're going to have your occasional new construction where your expectation setting might be a little bit different, but explaining that any property that's been previously owned and lived in, it's not new, it's not going to be new. There's going to be some issues that come up. I always mention like every single property seems to have a toilet. We're going to always see that. We send a sample inspection report as well at the beginning of the period so that they can see this is what an actual report looks like. And again, just establishing that we've never seen a clean report ever. One time I had one report that said the ice cube maker was broken and that was the only issue. And it was a new house. So that's unique. So I'm just setting the expectation with that timeline. There will be issues that come up. When those issues come up, our goal is of course to compromise, getting to the settlement people, not having the transactions fall apart, but reminding them that we are on their side. Of course, we're on their side, but our goal is compromise when possible. And then just talking them through what are the options whenever that inspection report comes back. And that's just moving through, being able to terminate if there's absolutely no resolution, ask for repairs, ask for credits. So just setting that. I love that expectation.
So I think the critical component is setting expectations with three different people, whether you're on the seller side, the buyer side, or just talking to the other agent. And we try and start setting expectations with all the parties before we even are under contract. So when we meet with sellers, one of the things that we talk to them about is that inspections have come back, and that's a good thing for you. And here's why. And we talk about the fact that in the world when we didn't have any inspections, buyers got in, they were unhappy, they thought people hid stuff, and it became lawsuits. So we talk about protecting them. We want to be done. You want to get your money, give up your keys, and move on and not have to think about this property again. So we set the expectation that inspections are likely to come up, and that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing for you. With the sellers, we also start to talk about as we're going through the house, when we're pricing and preparing it, we talk about the things that are going to come up. Oh, you have a 20-year-old roof. If this doesn't come up in inspections, it's likely to come up in insurability. So we set the parameters for those folks at the very beginning so they understand, and they've already heard us say 5 times, roof's probably going to be an issue. Might be something we're going to have to negotiate on. So by the time it comes up on the inspection, this is not new information. On the buy side, as we're going through the house, again, we are not inspectors. We don't pretend to be, but we are savvy enough to read through disclosures and look at things and see that the roof is curling and looks like it could potentially be at the end of its useful life. And we're going to be having those conversations. We're going to be looking at the age of the systems. A lot of times it says installed by such and such, or we can actually look at serial numbers and put into ChatGPT. How do you find the age of a Amana HVAC system? We always tell them this is our best guess. We don't know that, but this might be an older unit, something to consider could be coming up on inspections, right? We're not the inspector. We don't know. We're just trying to get as much information so that we're preparing the buyers also of things that might be part of the home. And then we also talk about gee, the fact that it has an older HVAC system and an older roof might be why it's priced about $30,000 less than every other house in this neighborhood. They might have already factored that in.
Mhm.
So just understand, these may or may not be tools that we can, or things that we can really negotiate on. And then the final piece of setting the expectations is actually with the other agents. So when we're getting in offers and we're talking to people, I always tell people, hey, inspections are back. I see they're in your offer. Tell me a little bit about how you set the table for your buyers on inspections. How do you prepare them? I love that you send an inspection report because people see 76 pages and automatically freak out. And the reality is, most of it might say, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, right? There might be 2 red items on a 76-page paper, but they see 76 pages and freak out. So we try and talk to our co-bros on, obviously our deal is to keep this together. Let's talk about how we set the expectations. And then from a seller side, if I have priced the home based on the fact that you're probably gonna, just like you're maybe replacing the carpet, you're replacing the hot water heater and these things, I share that up front. And I try and make sure that they understand that, we factor that in the sale price. I had one just this last week that had older windows.
Mhm.
And so we talked to the guy when he was writing the offer, he said, there's older windows. I said, you know what? Maybe that's something you want to factor into your offer because other people are going to see that too. And they asked for some seller help in the offer. And then we took it out of the inspection completely. And candidly, they asked for a lot less seller help than probably is going to be required to replace all the windows. But that was how they got the offer accepted. So setting the expectations from each party, buyer, seller, and agent up front before you get under contract, I think that helps a lot.
I love that.
Love that.
I love sending a report to your.
Yeah.
That's, we'll be talking about that soon. 15 years and I never, but with that being said, I'm a big proponent of that first meeting with your buyers is everything. So you meet them here where it's quiet, you spend an hour and a half aside with them, you interview them, they interview you, we're gonna figure out if we're a good fit. And if they hire you, you then set the expectations. So in that meeting, I tell them about what inspections are like. And I'm way out of the box, so bear with me here. I remind them that we are floating on Earth and we're a ball in the air. We forget that we're suspended and we're moving. And your house is going to stretch and expand in Central PA all day long. Like during the winter, my hardwood floors, I'll start to see separations. I'm not going to flip out because when the spring comes, we have humidity and they close up. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, please remember that we break into the ground, we put a foundation in, the grounds have minerals, water, veins. They slap tar on, and we think that we're going to be okay. Then we build up into the air. It could be winter, spring, summer. That wood is stretching, expanding all day long. I don't care if it was prepped in the factory. It takes 40 or 50 years for that to dry out. Then we got the roof, then we got the windows. And so when we go out shopping, you are buying a home that's been lived in and it's also been on the earth, which is moving and stretching, expanding, heat and humidity. So we're going to go through and we're going to see this. But let's talk about the big ticket prices. So we know that you're here for 300,000. Let me ask you, if we find the roof needs to be replaced, can you do that? And then I ask them, what do you think that would cost? And just let them answer. And then the next thing, how much is an HVAC cost? And go through those big ticket items and say, what do you think would be the most important things for when you look through? Is it that the toilet's loose? Because that is going to come up and every time the toilet's loose. Yes, no. Yeah. Or is it more important about the roof, the HVAC, furnace, hot water heater, your big? Yeah. So as we go through, that's what you'll be looking for. And that's what you'll be looking for. I don't attend inspections because it's your time with the inspector to learn the home. And it's only going to be the two of you there, not mom, dad, cousins, and sisters, because you need to focus on the home. And the inspector cannot be interrupted. So I don't go on inspections because you're going to ask me what I think. And I may not care less about the toilet, but I've been wondering about the foundation. So it's your time. So you gotta set the pace before they even leave the office with you. And then it's easier to say, hey, do you remember when we met at the office and we talked about this? Because they may start to say, oh, those cabinets, I don't think that. That's cosmetic. We don't care about that in the inspection.
Right.
So set the pace from the very first meeting. A lot of folks breeze through that consultation, do not breeze through the consultation. And then with the sellers, same thing, Shannon. You know, we're looking out for things. But one thing that I always suggest to my sellers, would you be open-minded to a pre-inspection? And have a pre-inspection done in the home so that we can market the home as a pre-inspected home. That way, if there are any surprises, that we can take care of it beforehand. And then I think you got to ask clients really hard questions. Get used to asking hard questions. And one is, what's your tolerance level? So for the homeowners and think their home's perfect, and then an inspection report comes, and maybe Shannon's clients are only asking for 3 things. I've had a lot of sellers focus on the things that Shannon's not asking for, because now they're reading the report. I'm like, forget the report. Just focus on only the 3 things that her clients are asking. The rest of it does not mean a single thing. So you got to really spend time prep so that you can say, hey, do you remember when? Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I love. I'm curious, does anyone go on inspections? Like Julie's saying no.
I did.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't. I didn't.
Yeah.
I think as a new agent.
Yeah.
Like as quickly as you can get the paperwork off here and get a contract to close, get it, but go through 1 or 2 to
Yeah.
understand the contract.
Yeah.
So I've gone on inspections. I was blessed enough to be trained by a person that said your job is to keep all of us out of the lawsuit. And that's how I think. And I share that with my clients. The job for tonight is, and through the whole thing, is to keep out a lawsuit. So with that in mind, if I'm at the inspection and I start making comments like, oh, that's no big deal. And then they go into the home and a year later, that no big deal that Julie has said just fell apart. Who's being sued?
Right.
Me. I'm not the expert.
Right.
Yeah.
Let the inspector do their job. My job all day long is real estate. Real estate. It's not even lending. It's
Yeah.
not even all these other, it's real estate all day long.
I love that.
So I've gone on.
I love it.
We usually meet them there, I introduce the inspector and make sure that between the 2 of us, we set the expectations of big ticket items. These are the things we're looking for. We're not worried about, you know, the dirty carpets, those kind of things.
Right.
We're looking for the big ticket items that your health and safety are going to cost you a lot of money. In this market, it's maybe unpopular, but in this market, I'm also explaining to people, I understand that that's a 11-year-old or a 12-year-old HVAC system. If it is working, we're probably not going to be able to ask for that, right? So there are markets and there are times when it's way more a buyer's market and you can go, oh, this is a 12-year-old system and the useful life was 12 to 15 years and we want a credit for partial replacement. I don't think we're there yet.
Yeah.
I don't think we should be there. So we talked on warranty instead, right? That's when we spin it and go, you know what, this might not have a lot of useful life. Maybe we need to ask for a warranty for these big ticket items, or maybe, you know, you want to consider purchasing, or maybe we joint purchase a home warranty for things like that.
Now, Julie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, for some of the new agents, in the room, they may not know what's appropriate and what's not at a home inspection, but correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you have some people show up to a home inspection that should not have been at a home inspection? Wasn't that a recent situation that you had? And so I think it's also really good to set clear expectations on who is to be at a home inspection.
So page 1, I call it the party page.
Okay.
Those are all the people that are involved in this transaction. And if mom and dad and aunt and uncle and best friend are not on page 1, they are not to be at that inspection. So that's what I tell them from the very beginning. I know you want your mom and dad to see the home. Please wait until settlement day to have them come through. They may not show up for inspection. So we did. We had one of our clients in Hershey was so upset. And mistake number 2 is we allowed her to stay because of the dog. So from here on in, no matter what, you've had to leave. So the inspector came with a protege, which we didn't know. And then the wife, the husband, and 2 parents. And imagine being the seller listening to the inspector telling the new buyers everything that's wrong with the home, because that's their job. But she's there hearing it. So she called and she was beside herself, and I called the other agent. I said, you gotta make everybody leave. I want them all in the house now. She is beside herself. So it's a good reminder, only the people on the front of the page, legally, once again, are the only ones that are to be at the inspection. And if you need to ask, bring somebody, you ask, and all parties have to agree. Yeah.
We also make sure that we encourage our buyers to attend the home inspection, but we also make sure that we work with inspectors that are willing to take calls. So if just the husband or just the wife was able to make it, and then we get back the report and there's lack of clarity on something, you know, oh, well, he seemed like it wasn't that big a deal, but it's still a red item. That's the kind of thing that we get on the phone and we do a 3-way conversation or 4-way conversation and say, hey, help us understand a little bit. And one of the favorite questions I like to ask is this what you would typically expect in a home of this age? So that's always a good kind of perspective. We had a deal that unfortunately fell apart. It was a 1908 house. And so there were grounded plugs in the kitchens and the baths. There was a grounded plug in the family room and in another kind of family space, but the bedrooms and things didn't have grounded plugs. And so, and you know, with plaster walls, that's not an easy task. To be candid with you, we would have put grounded plugs in at least one in every room. But one of the things that our inspector, as I said, is this something you would typically expect to see in a house of this age? And he goes, well, absolutely. And he goes, let me ask you a question. He goes, when you're in your bedroom, the things you plug in, what do you plug in? Your lamp, maybe your charger or your clock, something like that. He goes, do any of them have a 3-prong outlet? No, actually they don't. He's like, and that's why you don't really need the 3-prong outlets for these types of systems. And so it was a really good perspective. And that's why I like to be able to make sure that we give multiple options of inspectors, but we pre-vet them. And we say, hey, look, if my people have a question or a concern, we're getting on a call together, then I'm going to ask you questions and let them ask you questions to make sure they get their answers and they feel confident. Because what's written sometimes was scary, but the conversation was not.
It's understandable.
Happens all the time.
Understandable. Okay. Kelly, let's talk a little bit about replying to the inspection, right? How do you decide whether you're going to ask for the repairs, you're going to ask for credits, you're going to ask for a price adjustment? What strategies are you using to sort of determine what your course of action is going to be?
I think number one is in order to ask for repairs or ask for credit, you have to have all of the information. You have to collect all of it. So knowing what something's even going to cost. So getting professionals out there to assess the situation, because obviously the inspection report and the inspector are not, they're not going to give you cost estimates. So making sure that we get professionals out there to get full information. And then the next step is taking all of the options to the client, explaining the pros and cons of each option and giving them some guidance, but certainly not telling them what to do. And then secondly, and Shannon touched on this earlier, the conversations that you're having with the agent on the other side of the table are extremely important. So not just asking your client, what is it that, here are your options, what is it that you want to do, but making sure you're talking to the agent on the other side of the table. How are the sellers feeling about this? Do you have an idea of what options might feel best to them and why? And really getting a window into their mindset as much as you possibly can, because again, the goal is compromise and as much as possible, helping everybody get on the same page.
Great. Same question.
Yeah.
So, I echo everything that Kelly said. And one of the things that this may sound silly, but in case anybody is actually new here, a price decline, unless you're cash, probably isn't helping the buyer because it's not putting money in their pocket. So typically if it's something that's going to need to be replaced, probably you're going to be looking at getting them to fix it or getting seller assistance, a seller credit. And we also kind of are trying to be realistic. If this has been a really fastidious seller and everything is buttoned up and they've done a great job, I may advise that we might feel more comfortable allowing them to make that repair, right? Because their pride of ownership is evident and, you know, they're gonna like do it really top notch. There are lots of times when it's like, do you wanna let them pick who is making this major repair? Maybe not. Maybe we want to get a credit and then get it done by somebody that we know, like, and trust, and we know is going to come back if there's a problem. So it's kind of that balancing act to figure that out. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, no, I would say the same thing. It's a balancing act and know who your buyer is and what's real important to them. So is it that they can, you know, put that money back into their pocket to, and who knows what they'll use it for, or if they absolutely have no skills and talent whatsoever, like, I don't even know what a paintbrush is, yeah, I want my sellers to be the ones to do the repairs. So I think it really depends, getting to know what your buyer's needs are and who they are. Because they're all different and what they're tolerant, what they tolerate and what they can't tolerate. I will say though too, is we always leave a house book at all our listings. So that has the disclosures in there with other information as well. So when the inspector comes and there's any doubt, there's the property disclosures are right there on the calendar in our home book that we leave.
Do you care to elaborate on the home book?
So the home book is, just has, you know, the front cover, and then it has the property disclosures, lead disclosures, it has utility sheets. We do a tell us 10 things you love about living in the home in the area. It helps us with our marketing. So if they filled it out with good stuff, not, you know, stupid stuff, sometimes it's stupid stuff like that. But if it's really good stuff, we put that sheet in there as well. And then if the sellers did anything, like you said, very proud of their maintenance of the year and how they changed the home and how they upgraded the home, then they have a sheet with all their upgrades in there as well. And then the back page is about Keller Williams and the Hess team and why you want to hire us. With
Taking notes, right?
yeah,
Everybody's
and
taking notes.
with, what do we call them? Reviews, the most current reviews we put back there as well.
Julia, love that. And I love that you said it's really good that you know what your buyers are capable of. And I think Shannon, you mentioned like knowing what the sellers are capable of too. Like I think if you marry those two, like you can't go wrong. Like that's, if you know what's happening, then it's surefire.
And I'm very bullet point. So with my sellers, you know, I love your but that's going to go right on heart. But with my sellers, I explain the process. You know, this is the 3 things that are going to happen. They're going to come and say, we love it, we're going to take it, we're signing off. Or they're going to say, we love it, we still want it, and yet we want these 3 things to be taken care of. And we're going to talk about that. And I tell my sellers, you can say go fly tight. And I tell my buyers, they can say go fly tight. Or they'll, you know, they'll negotiate. And please keep in mind, at this point, everybody wants to get the settlement table, or the sellers have every right to say, we're not doing anything. So you really got to prep them. And I prep the sellers as well, and then follow up with Mr. and Mrs. Seller. We're at this point, do we really not want to go to settlement? So really learn to lead by questioning, like ask that question and just let it hang, you know, and then make sure the sellers never say this to buyers. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the bad news is in the state of PA, it's more protection heavy for the buyer, and they can cancel over a light bulb. They can. Yeah. They can cancel over a light bulb. So it's important to know who you're getting the offer from. Do your history before you accept the offer. I know again from Shannon and these ladies, we're going to settle this. And then there's some of them.
That's why the I was just gonna say, that's why communication is so important. We've all had that agent that just drops an offer in our inbox, never called us before the show and never called us after the showing. Didn't present about the offer. Yeah, we have no idea what we're working with or dealing with. And that's a sign that it could be a very challenging transaction, because without communication, without some sort of a collaborative relationship, that's tough to get through.
Know your contract. Know your contract.
And to that end, one of the questions you had on there is how do you reply to inspections? And I think it's got to be a phone call. I have a letter drafted. We always have a letter drafted. And candidly, I love ChatGPT. Because I'll write it and then I'll put it in there and I'll say, hey, I want the tone to be friendly and collaborative, but firm. These are the things that we want to do. But I want it to be in such a way that the agent can then just forward that to their client after they've had the conversation. But before I forward it to Julie, I'm going to call Julie and have the conversation and say, my people are super excited. Julie, we did have one big thing that came up. Did you realize that the roof there's leaking in the attic? Did you realize that? And just have the conversation. And it's just having the conversation. Well, that could be a deal breaker for my people. So I need you to understand that we're going to have to work through that.
Yeah.
And then we have the conversation, and I will use that as a bullet point. I was, hey, I've written it out for you. Let me send it over. Let's talk through it. And then we talk through the specific points. And we also make sure that our buyer understands if you're asking for the roof, you're probably not asking for the ground to plug in the bedroom, right? That's not what you're going to ask for. If you're asking for big ticket stuff, you're probably not going to get some of the little stuff. But I got a guy that for $50 to $75 can put in a couple more ground outlets for you. Are you good with that? Let's do that. And so setting those expectations, but I think people want to do things in text. Do not text stuff like this. Do not text stuff like this. And in my opinion, you don't just send an email. You send an email with a phone call, and you make sure that the email is written in such a way and with a tone that if they forward it to their seller, it doesn't blow up in your face. And that is so critical because most people are not going to rewrite it. Most people are not going to figure out how to wordsmith it. So I'll even say, if you wanted to forward this to your people, is there anything that you would like me to soften or strengthen so that it's going to play well with them?
And there's a saying out there, I love it. It's text is, oh, no, I'm good. Text is informational. Phone conversation face to face is persuasional.
Yeah.
That's where the gold is. The gold is getting on the phone. I can hear your tonality.
Yeah.
I can hear. I was in a deal one time where the guy was sent through title inspection. I was so nervous. He's a top agent. It was a long time ago. And he called me and he said, what is this? And what is it? This is, and I was on my way into a party. And this is just, and I was like, oh, you make me so nervous. And then I was talked back and I said, because I always said a licensed plumber.
Yeah.
A licensed electrician. When I write it, it's got to be licensed people, not, and that's what got him angry. And I finally said to him, is this what your seller's response was?
Or is it yours?
And he said, no, I went to the And I said, well, who's buying the home? And he goes, well, your buyers. I go, who's selling them? He goes, my sellers. I go, then why are you and I arguing? Why are you even talking? This is a great response and a great, how about you just take it? I was shaking. He's like, I've been in forever. And he said, man, you are right. Because it was a great response.
Yeah.
So get out of the way.
It may not be a big deal to them.
And your sellers may go, this is great. And I presented it. This is 3 things we wanted. Right. You know, like,
That's probably, I think that's the number one most important thing is keeping your own emotion.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have personal emotion about it.
Not at all.
And oftentimes we do encounter personal emotion on the other side. We have to have the skills to rein that in.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah.
You did it beautifully, it sounds like.
And we have to have the skills. We have to have the skills to rein our buyers in. We received a reply to inspection the other day where it was very clear that the agent just sent the inspection report and said, hey, what do you want them to fix? And it was like 2 pages of stuff. And quite frankly, most of it was stupid. But the fact of the matter is, if you send that to the seller's going to lose their mind. So having the conversation and saying, what's important in this? And then if we can't get that out of the buyer's agent, having the conversation with our seller where we're like, look, these are probably the deal breaker things. Maybe they just added this other stuff to get you to really consider doing these critical things. These are things other people are going to ask for. And being able to use that line and say, unfortunately, now that we know this, we have to disclose this. And this is going to come up with other buyers. So we have 2 options. We can deal with it now and try and stay in the game with these people that are that much further along, or we can get out of this, but probably we're still going to end up fixing this. And now we're going to go back on the market and find another person and start the whole process over again. So which feels like a better solution for you? And 9 times out of 10, if it's big stuff, you're going to fix it anyway.
Yeah, and you really gotta set the expectations. I'm a numbers person, so I'll say, well, we can find 5 things.
Yeah.
And then out of those 5 things, we're gonna talk about what you can live with and what you can't. And we're gonna narrow it down, because I got a 2.5 page the other day.
Yeah.
I had to color coordinate it, because my mind went. Yeah, so there was plumbing here and plumbing there, and so the plumbing was pink and the electric was green and something else was yellow and then when I called the agent, that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
They just sent it over and he just put it was 2.5 pages.
Yeah.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Before I could even talk to the sellers.
Melissa, what you got?
Another question, is how do you respond form wise? Like with all of these things, so I've come across where I get buyers reply to inspections and they don't have a change in terms form. So how do we really know what the buyer is asking for if you're on the sell side? So in your responses, you always have the inspection, the buyer reply and the change in terms? How do you handle your
I go
response?
first. I go first because the buyer's reply to inspection is a negotiating tool. And then once we've negotiated and we've agreed, now we put over the change in terms with all the specifics. So I do see a lot of people send both of them at the same time, but we've talked about it. So I think it's best to do them separately. But I guess it's preference.
That's how I do as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be, the BRI used to be the negotiating document and, but everybody signed it, but you'll notice the seller signature is not on there because it is just, this is what we want to talk about. These are our concerns. These are what we want you to fix. And then once we go back and forth, go from there. That's a great question.
Hey, Adrian Hans here.
What was that from the mention?
Buyer's reply to inspection. It's called the BRI and it literally only has the buyer's name. So it says, all the inspections that this is a reply to. And this is something that used to happen years ago. So like somebody did a home, a wood test, and a radon, and a septic and a well inspection, right? They had all the big ticket items. But then the septic wasn't back. So they did their BRI and they just checked everything but septic. In my personal opinion, I'm not willing to negotiate with you yet. So if we need to do an extension to the reply to inspection for you to get those results back, I'm willing to do that because we might agree in principle to a lot of things on this buyer's reply to inspection, and then we find out the septic is tanked and you need a new septic system. Well, now I'm not spending this money. So watch what they have checked on there to make sure it's all the inspections that they have legally, contractually said they were going to do so that you're safe. And then once you're negotiating on all of it, then you do your reply, your change in terms.
I love that. So we have a
Thank
question
you.
from the Zoom room, and I will say the Zoom room has grown.
Yeah.
The Zoom room has grown. We have a lot on here. So Hans wants to know, he says the new inspection process is being dovetailed in January of 2026. How do we address this elongated process?
Inspection or appraisal? Is the appraisal rates changing?
Oh, that may be.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, Adrian.
Yep.
Also, though, I think a lot of times this is a good clarification for our sellers and our buyers. If you have an FHA or a VA loan, the appraiser also does their little mini inspection for health and safety items, railings, sometimes they'll call roofs, electrical panels, non-grounded plugs around water, what's
Broken glass panes.
Yes. Chip paint.
If you didn't say
Yeah,
that, that's
chipped
the
Right.
point. And when it's chipped, it can't be on the ground.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
gotta be removed from the ground because the lead will go into the ground. So don't just chip it and then paint and
Yeah.
walk away with all.
Yeah.
the chips.
That won't
So-
fly. So I
I-
think understanding and explaining to our contractual parties that there's the in-home inspection and that's about making sure they understand what they're getting, right? It's an informational thing to understand what they're buying and if there's anything that they can't live with, negotiating that. And then there's the appraisal, which is really about value, but with some of these loan types, it also has a little bit of an inspection component on it too. And I think it's important to explain that to them.
Excellent, yeah.
Yeah.
Order to get.
It does.
I like
It does.
Not
Yeah. It's
And I've had things called out unconventional, so make sure your sellers know, in the rare occasion It's not just FHA.
Yeah.
I just had one recently. It was the dumbest thing. And we had to get a pest inspection because he saw an ant. And he was not backing down because I would call him crazy and challenge.
Yeah.
And that was a conventional. I said to him, this is conventional lending. I'm confused on why you want a pest and about the roof. And I'm just saying, guys, don't be afraid to challenge. When they say the roof's at the end of the life, this is what I call the inspector. Hey, could you please help me out? Why you said it was at the end of its life? And they go, well, it's around 20 years old. Okay, did you see proof of fail? Right, because I could be at the end of my life. What does that mean? No, I mean, I think we are hired to challenge.
Yeah.
What the heck? I have a picture of a roof up in the Finger Lakes that we were up there one time. I had a hole in it. So I send that over and say, this is proof of the end of its life. But seriously, and a lot of them I say, it's only because I have to call it out as 20 years old. So then I get a roofer to come in and inspect it and do some type of written thing that it's good for 5 years.
A roof cert.
A roof cert or whatever they want to call it. Some will call it that, but don't put it in writing. So if you have to tell me that you went up and you took photos, if it's leaking or something growing, but if it looks good,
There's
it's
no
only
range.
20 years old, don't put on the report it's at the end of its life, because who knows what.
That's
Exactly.
But that's
us.
Yeah,
that's also why you have to be able to call them
yeah.
and have that conversation. And you also, I mean, I tell my co-broker, I may call them, you know, if we have confusion or clarity, lack of clarity, we might be calling your home inspector.
And one other thing, we're high Ds.
Yeah.
So well, it's not even control, it's clarity.
Yeah.
I like all parties to have clarity so that all parties can make an educated decision.
Absolutely.
So when now I lost train of thought or something.
Oh.
Oh, well, okay. Oh, shoot, it's good. All right.
Well, if you think of it, let me know. We were gonna spend some time talking about communication and negotiation, but I think that they've done a really good job sort of.
They have.
I was going. And if I'm
I'd like to-
representing the seller, do I need that? Do I need that? Okay, if I'm representing the seller, I don't even know if it's on. And in negotiations, before, if it's multiple, I'll say, who's your inspector? How long have you been working with your inspector? And then when I get the phone call, I want to know, because I know a lot of them. Is so-and-so coming out, or are you sending somebody on your team? And then if it's an old home, like 1900, okay, who's doing the inspection on your team? Do they understand a Camp Hillborough home that does not have grounding? Or are they going to go in and, you know, freak out, or like say, you know, and so I call an interview and I want to know, hey, are you doing that? Because I know you can do 1900 homes, or are you sending somebody from your office who just got trained? So, you know, I think it's real important that the inspector that's going has experience, like knob and tube. Some young ones say, oh my gosh, there's knob and tube, you're gonna have to rip it all out. An older person go, I haven't had a house yet that burned down, and by the way, it's disconnected.
Yeah.
So, you know, you gotta know who you're gonna get, you know, your clients connected with, and as a seller, it's our job to, you know.
And the buyer, because the same thing, you don't want the buyer freaking out about something that is this normal for a home of this age? Doesn't mean, I mean, some of it you still need to fix, right? But is this what you would expect in a home of this age? Is a real kind of, oh, so this isn't an unusual situation and I should be freaked out that it's like that.
I live in a 1930 home. Yep, we have nothing to.
There you go.
We're doing good. We've got 2 businesses out of our home.
There you go.
Nothing burnt down.
There you
Yeah.
go. So Kelly, I'll start with you. I'd like each of you to answer this question. What is the biggest inspection related mistake that you see newer to business agents making?
Kelly and I admitted we didn't.
Okay.
I would say, I touched on this earlier, I think it's personal emotion and desperation, because if you're a newer agent, a lot of times you really need the money from this transaction, you really need it to close. And so it's easier to get emotionally tied in and to have some level of desperation to get it to the settlement table. So either A, you're unnecessarily attacking the person on the other side of the phone, your co-broker, or B, you're trying to push things through with your client in a way that's representing you and not them.
Mhm.
So I think those are probably for people early on, not everybody obviously, but I think it's just easier to fall into that.
Yeah, it's good to be aware of that. Yeah, good to be aware of that.
That's a great answer. I think along those lines, and we've talked about it a lot, but it's setting expectations. And one of the expectations I think is really critical for both sellers and buyers to know is that buyer remorse is a super real thing. We always talk to all of our buyers that, you know, right after you go into contract, you have this euphoria and then you go, oh crap, what did I do? And you start to panic. And the quicker that you can get them in for the inspections, I think the better off you're going to be too, because if they have 7 days to freak out about it, number one, it hurts your days on market, so you may not even get quotes for other things. But it also gives them time to start to panic more. And I think explaining to the sellers, this is a very real time for them to start to freak out and go, oh my gosh, I've committed to all this money. My payment is going to be $150 more than I really wanted it to be. I can't afford to do anything. That's the mindset of the buyer sometimes. So I think it's really important to set that expectation and set the expectation of buyers. You're likely going to feel this. Everybody feels this. Take a deep breath. Let's talk through the reasons that you chose this house, the reasons that this decision makes sense for you. So it's back to setting those expectations and helping both parties understand everybody feels this and we'll get through it. And if there's a reason that you shouldn't get through it, then we're gonna tell you that too. Like if this basement of this 1820s house is caving in, this is not a good decision for you.
We will have that discussion. Yeah, we will have that.
Thank God we do that now. We can get you out of this.
I love that.
So what was the question? The question was receiving.
What
mistakes?
What mistakes do you see in the business agency?
Oh, I thought it was in doing the reply to inspection. No. Oh, okay. I think it's getting to know your clients, ask the hard questions. That's what they're paying you for. And why I say that is when we got that 2.5 page, reply, I chatted with the agent and we on our end were just scrambling to get quotes for everything. And when we were done, the agent said to me, oh, he's a licensed plumber. And I'm like, and the agent said, it would have been good to know that. And so me being bold said, well, did you do an agent consultation? How do you know that your buyer, like you know what your buyers do for you?
Yeah.
Know what's important to them. Get to know them before you start showing homes.
Yeah.
Like I'm a runner. So when we bought the home in Campbell, I had to drive around first to see, did I feel safe? Can I do long distance? Do I have to meet my friend? Get to know them. Tell them we're going to get to know each other really quickly because that's the only way I'm going to be able to understand what your needs are and how to help you. So I'm like, my client just paid for plumbing that we didn't have to. Is that what I'm hearing? Did you do a buyer's consultation? Maybe you need to come to KW. I love that. I love that. So that's the biggest thing. Set the expectation, get to know who you're working with. And don't be afraid that when you're interviewing them, you may not be a fit. If there's somebody that you feel like, wow, I'm just not a fit. So you know what? It's so important to me that you work with the right agent. I don't think I'm that agent. And yet the good news is I'm going to connect you with the right person.
Amen.
So their needs come first, but you got to understand what their needs are and be okay with not taking them. As long as you put their needs first, you'll be fine. You'll have a great business.
Julie, I think you've done a great job of giving some examples of this, but I'm going to let you give you one more opportunity. What is one lesson from a past inspection that's changed how you handle them today?
The lesson, okay, yeah, all right. We're still talking. It's in front of my son. So that was the lesson. She was a single gal, and I okayed that her dad could go to the inspection. But what happened was dad brought his brother, which was the uncle, and she brought her boyfriend. So now my inspector's trying to do his job. He doesn't have one person asking him questions. He has 4 people shooting questions. Could you imagine being an inspector trying to do your job? What was that question? No, I'm not getting to. What about this? I don't know. What about this? So they asked for window replacements. And when he did the walkthrough the day of, she looked up and said, what about the skylight? I'm like, what about the skylight? She goes, that's a window. I'm like, that's a skylight. So I pulled out the papers right away. Nobody said in the inspection or the reply that the skylight was to be done. And so then I called my inspector, who said it's a window. I'm like, it's not, oh, it's a skylight. So he threw me on the bus after working with him for 8 years. So that was it. We got out. And I let my emotions get in the way. And I should have bought her a skylight, but I dug my heels in. And so that was my lesson. Now we still, because we're friends of, the family. But my lesson for me is buy her the damn skylight. You'd be done with 250, 350, who knows? But nobody goes on that inspection except the people on the contract. That was the lesson on it.
That's very.
No one. He was, and when I called him, he said they were at me, asking a million questions. And so I tell him, your inspector needs to focus.
Yes.
He needs to focus, he or she needs to focus on the house and focus on you.
Yeah.
That's why I don't show up, because you're gonna ask me questions. It's not my purchase.
So my biggest inspection nightmare, and by the way, if you ever have to replace a septic system, you should call me because I've had like 6. Oh, I've been there 14 years.
Good to know.
Ridiculous.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. So maybe you don't. But we had a house that had an older, like 50, 60-year-old gravity fed septic system, drain field, sand mound, the whole 9 yards. And my people moved out a week before the house went under contract. And we allowed, which is rightfully contractually, you should do a hydraulic load test of that type of system. Because a hydraulic load test is saying, hey, can the system support normal wear and tear? But there are multiple ways to do that. The easy way that most people want to do that is they get a 600-gallon truck of water and they dump it in the system. And then they come back and do it again if it's a 4-bedroom or more. And then they test it. And there's another way to do it, which I learned after the system failed, which is basically somebody comes and turns on a couple of faucets, takes out the stopper to make sure it's not going to be a problem, and lets water run for 2 days because it's more consistent with the amount of water that a family would use. They're in the dishwasher, they're taking showers, they're washing their hands, whatever, flushing toilets. But if you let that run for a couple of days and then you do the testing, it's more consistent. So we blew out, at least I believe we did, and so did the other inspector that did it the other way, a passable system, which ultimately cost my client about $38,000. So we did not ask them what kind of hydraulic load they were going to ask, they were going to do. So if you need to do a hydraulic load test, or somebody, your seller is getting a hydraulic load test, it's bad. It's bad.
I would say mine is probably making sure that the seller is under no circumstances going to be in the home during the buyer's inspection.
No matter what.
Yes, so asking that question, like you can't assume, you have to make sure the agent on the other side understands seller cannot be there. And there are those special circumstances, right? Where you've got a seller that has medical needs and it's very challenging for them to get out of the house. If you have that situation, maybe that's the time where you want to be present, just to kind of put a muzzle on.
Yeah.
Fair. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Nor should the attack dog be in
Right.
the house.
Yeah,
we've had some of those.
But it's happened where, seller is in the house and they say something,
Well, then have them time.
right? They say something, they're not thinking about what they're saying, they're not intending to say something they shouldn't, and it blows the whole transaction.
Yeah, for sure.
Really get to know your inspectors.
Yeah.
And
your appraisers.
are we being taped?
We are taping. I'm just saying we are taping.
I just think they're coming back with a vengeance. It's been so many years. So I've had conversations with them. I know it's been a few years and your income's been a little low, but can we not go into the home and try to prove something? And I've had that experience. Yeah, I've had that experience. So get to know who the inspectors are that you know, love, and trust.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What questions do you guys have? Can I take just a quick time out real quick? We do have a lot of newer agents in the room, some newer agents, and I should have done an introduction in the beginning. So everybody knows. So we do have Kelly Carothers is left on our panel. Kelly works for the Dauphin team. How many years in business? 5 years in business. Shannon Foster, part of our ALC, 12 or 15,
I think it's 14.
14 years, yeah, 14 years in the industry. That's it. Yeah. Julie Hess.
15.
15.
16.
Okay.
I think I'm only 16.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, so they have seen a lot of inspections. They've been through a lot of inspections, which is how they got to be up here on this team. So do you guys have any questions with regards to inspections? Go ahead, Ms.
Yeah.
Dorr.
It might be an obvious, but if you do a pre-inspection for your seller, if they get a pre-inspection and they obviously post that and make it. Well, everyone can see it pretty much. Does that mean that if the buyer does get their own inspection and they request anything to be done? Do you have a way to kind of say, since we gave you the pre-inspection, or we gave you the report from our pre-inspection, and those things were on that report, we don't need to do those, like, does that make sense?
I think it's still a negotiation. Really, everything is a negotiation. You know, we put things on a seller's disclosure, and just because we disclose it doesn't mean we're never going to address it. That's another disclosure piece. So I think when you're buying an asset as big as your home, everything is negotiable. I think that the benefit of the pre-inspection is you and your seller understand what's likely to come up. And if there are some big ticket items that are going to cause a problem, you can have that conversation with them and talk about, hey, we're going to need to either repair this ideally, or maybe we're going to have to offer a credit for repairing that.
What if you're asking, like, what if you're pricing it based on that inspection report? So
That's still a negotiation, but that's why you have those conversations up front with that other agent. Hey, you'll see that we have that, we see that we had an inspection. It's 100 amp service. And there's no room in the panel, and there might be reasons that people would want to upgrade. We've reflected that in the price, and just kind of tell them that up front so that the agent knows you're less likely to negotiate. I don't know,
Okay.
you guys may have different opinions.
No, I think that's great, but I was just sitting there thinking of something, one more person, like get to know people in the community. So just because somebody has a septic and it was on the disclosures and said it was just, I don't know if the words, I don't think it says inspected, but it was just cleaned out. Cleaned out means cleaned out. It doesn't mean that Dillsburg went in and looked at the baffles, went down and inspected it. So a lot of times new agents go, oh no, it was just inspected in 2024. No, it was just, it was cleaned. And I called Dillsburg to get that education. I said, well, I'm confused. It's a long time ago. Did you inspect it? She goes, oh no. Every 3 years we clean it out. I go, when do you inspect it? She goes, when they ask. So as a buyer's agent, just be aware of that. That doesn't mean it was inspected. So once they get in, if something goes wrong and it's cleaned out, you know, if somebody waives the septic, I never waive the septic, I'm sorry. That's one thing I always tell. If they're gonna waive the septic, they have to sign a sheet saying against Julie Hess and Hess team advice. Yeah. We're waiving the septic.
Because the septic is something that even the most fastidious homeowners may not know there's a problem. I mean, until it's such a bad problem that there's stuff coming up in your yard, you don't know, but tree roots and things like that happen.
Yes.
The other part of the septic piece is even when they have the sewage enforcement officer come out for their rotation, they're not typically looking at the drain field unless there's a reason to look at the drain field. They're still only looking at the tanks and the baffles. So you really need an inspector to look at and then go do the absorption rate and make sure that the lines are all working and all of that good stuff.
And that's how you get a good review. And that's how they refer people to you, because she went the extra yard. Yeah. Step yard.
I've got a question for Julie. Have you ever asked a buyer to change home inspectors? Because you interview them,
Well,
right?
no,
So
if no, you mean because I'm representing the buyer?
no, if you're representing the seller, if you're on the listing site and
Oh,
you
yeah.
know who the home inspector
I
is.
have. Am I gonna be in trouble with that? Oh, yeah. No, I had an inspector in a Hershey home. Now, there's another thing. Ask your clients, are you going out away for the weekend? Like, make sure they're local. I did not know my clients were going away for the weekend, so Friday the inspector came, did the inspection. I was listening to him across the street, so I'm like, hey, it's 5 hours. He goes, no, we're done. It looked quite really well. People were a little picky. What happened was, which I'm totally against this, you know, who cares about blinds? So I think, who cares? I gotta buy a dryer. She ran the washer with no clothes in it to see if the washer works. What happened is the whatever behind it, the coil snapped, flooded the entire home. That was on a Friday. My clients didn't get home till Sunday at 5:30 because I was just gonna be comfy pants. Like, God, comfy pants. We gotta go. She called me bawling. She goes, what did the inspector do? My house is like a rainforest. Called sales right away. Luckily, they got there before we did. We couldn't even go to the front door. It's all coming out through the stone. The water, the basement ceiling had already fallen. The home was destroyed. And so I didn't know that they were gone for the weekend. When I called that particular inspector, I was like, okay, I'm like, no big deal. And I did some other thing to another home. Like, oh, I can see behind walls. You can't see behind walls. So the next day, the agent determined it because that inspector said there was mold behind the wall. So I had sales. I did. I said, well, now that you're here, we're going to rip this all apart. Can you go right there and cut all this out? Because he claimed there was mold there. 24 hours after what? There was no mold.
Oh, my word.
Yes, that inspector told those people from his info bar that there was mold behind that wall. And there was no mold.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that one,
It's just a new thing that I have learned because I had 2 home inspections done by the same company and now I saw the name and I was like, you've got, like, I already knew it was gonna be crap.
Mm.
And I'm just like, I never thought that that was a thing until you said it. I should have asked you, but
You did though. He said he used that guy.
yeah, but until it was scheduled, I didn't know. I didn't think to ask the company because I had an agent who's from Philly, but they're buying a house in Middletown and I called and he's like, hey, I'd be happy to facilitate, give you some names here that I know, like, and trust. And then he said I was ID taking over and like benefit of me. And then it turns out it's like, this company is atrocious. So now I've got an atrocious home inspection.
But you did the right, you can't force them.
You can't, sure.
But you did offer 3 names. And I think just like lenders, you know, you see a lender on there, they're like, this is a hot mess. There's no way. Hey, look, any of these people, I'm good with. But this, you know, and you gotta talk to the seller. It's gotta be from the seller. It can't be us. It's gotta be from the seller. You're explaining to the seller that we've had experiences with this. And we probably want to see if we can get them to not do XYZ inspector or whatever. And we'll give them names.
I call the other agent, what's your relationship? Well, before we even accept if we're multiple offers, and there, let's just say hypothetically, they all elected inspections. That's part of my interview process. You know, you're competing, so I have some questions. And then one of the questions is, who do you use for your inspections?
It's a great,
You know, I
like on my
Susie Q.
my list.
Okay, why do you use Susie Q? What's your experience?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a deal fall apart because of using that inspection company? We interview everybody before we put the multiple offers in front of them. And we say, this is who we talked to, this is why, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we all,
But even
our
with that-
buyers, we offer 3. We never tell them which ones. We get 3 letters, 3, you know, once again, Boston.
But even when it's not competing, I think it's still okay to say, you know, what's your experience with them? Who do you specifically use them? But, and then if, I mean, I had one where we had a particular person from this company, the owner we love, the other guy we don't like. And they said, they're gonna use this guy. I said, great, can you get him? And he said, I don't know, I've never had the other guys, you don't want. And so then they got the right guy. It was fine.
Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, if you're gonna offer a home warranty as like a selling point, like a year warranty or something like that, I don't know, is there a ballpark in something like that cost or?
5 to 6, I think 650 is the most. It's all based on size of home and all those things too, but I think 650 is as high as it gets.
And I'll just add to that, I typically advise sellers, don't offer it right up front. Keep it in your back pocket as a
Yeah.
negotiation.
Yeah.
What
You
about,
don't think they would help to eliminate inspection concerns and all that?
So my question as a buyer would be, why are they offering it? What are they concerned about?
What about the pre-listing inspection? Do you advocate for that for your sellers?
We talk about it, we
Yeah.
discuss it, but at the end of the day, the sellers they make all the decisions.
Sure.
So, yeah,
Do
at
you-
the end of the day, yeah, so we offer that.
Yeah.
And we only offer it if they have concerns. So while you're
Okay.
there listing and you're chatting and you think you're done, and they say, oh, one more thing. And then you're, oh, and then one more thing. And then that's when I say, do you think, let me offer this idea, and you're open-minded, maybe it would ease you. And also if they're real nervous Nellies, like,
Then
yeah,
that's something you're gonna put in your home book? Are you gonna have that in your home book for?
the home inspection.
Or is that something-
Sometimes it is, sometimes it's on the documents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing is when you're going through the house to list it, I think one of the best things you can do is you're walking through it, you see like, why you just look at it and go,
Mhm.
and you don't even have to say anything. And they're like, what? It's like, is that water? Do you know what that's from? And they'll be like, oh yeah, well, the roof leaked. It's like, oh, did you get that fixed? Do you think we need to get that fixed? It only happened once. Well, if we saw it, I'm pretty sure they're gonna see it. Are there other roof leaks? And you start asking those things and you get them thinking about the things. And then you say, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, do you remember when you were buying a home? And what was important to you? Well, this was our first home, so we just wanted to make sure there weren't gonna be big ticket items. Okay, let's talk about what are the big ticket items that people are probably gonna be concerned about. The roof, you start going through these things. Let's look, okay, now let's take off the seller glasses and put on the buyer glasses. You have an old roof and an old HVAC and your hot water heater is 12 years old too. Do you think people might have some concerns about that? And so you start asking those questions, and then that's when you start talking about inspections and strategy and credits and potentially replacing some stuff.
I was just gonna add that you certainly have some sellers that they cannot afford it, right? And you have to do everything in your power to keep that from happening. And that may be your seller that they're moving out of state on this date, they're out, they're gone. Or they're buying another house and if this falls through, that's falling through. There's a lot of situations like that. So those are the sellers that I'm talking to about getting a pre-inspection, because then we have a lot more control.
Okay.
We know kind of what cards we have to play with, and it just eases their mind if nothing else.
Yeah. Scott, you had your hand up, I think, and then
No,
we'll.
that was it. I was just gonna ask pre-listing inspections if there was like a typical market or like a type of property that you would suggest doing that with, but you guys pretty much.
Taryn's doing them on everybody. And her philosophy is, look, we need to know more about the house than anybody else. And
I love that.
yeah, and she's like, you know what, we need to be able to speak to the pros and cons, we need to know what's gonna come up. There are two areas that homes typically fall through. One is inspection, the other is appraisal. This is one we can take off the table. And that's, I think, she does it better than that, I'm sure, but that's the gist of what she says. And she said, most of my people go, hey, great, what can we do?
Let's do it.
It's cheaper from the front.
Yeah.
My job's to get you the most amount of money, the least amount of time. Yeah, and this is how.
And this is how we're gonna do it. This is how we're gonna do it. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. All right. Any last final parting thoughts? What was an aha? What was one thing that you learned or one thing that you're going to implement? There was some good stuff
Up front.
up front.
Was wondering, how often do you have to ask for extensions usually for the inspections?
I think very infrequently, but if it's like septic and well, those things take more time. So if the agent is saying 10 days, it's never gonna happen in 10 days. You need to have that conversation up front. And the other thing that I always tell people is, can you call today? Like, we just put it under contract. I know it's 6 o'clock at night. Can you leave a message for your inspector tonight? Because you wanna get things rolling.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add, not to take any more time, but while you're in that 10 days or 12 days or whatever, and you're getting quotes and all that, talk to that other side. Hey, this is just our update. I want to let you know who we had at the house today. Hey, we got this and this coming this week. Hey, you gotta keep them in the game. It's your job. So make sure you're communicating, not like, oh, we have an inspector coming out next week, and then you let a whole week go by. Because their buyers are nervous and wondering, the lender's wondering what's going on. So be the proactive person and keep in constant communication. Want to give you an update.
And if you are working with the team where they might delegate, so when I'm working with Kelly, I'm gonna say, Kelly, are you my point person? Who's my point person?
Yeah.
You wanna keep everybody updated, but I need to know who's home. And just like, hey, just checking in, how we doing? I haven't seen anything come through about the inspector. Do we know when that's gonna happen? You know, and just staying on track. And I'm sure you guys already do this, but when you send out, like when you're under contract and you send out that letter to the team with everything that talks about the dates and stuff, you don't just say 10 days, you say, you know, January 7th. So everybody's got on their calendar, January 7th.
Yeah.
And then we, you know, if I haven't heard from you in a couple of days, I'm gonna be saying, hey, I know it seems like a long time, but with the holidays and stuff, January 7th is gonna be here tomorrow. Have you talked to the inspector? Have you talked to the appraiser?
Just don't assume nothing.
Yeah, and it's not new people, older people,
Yeah.
people are busy, lives are crazy, you never know what's going on. Some people are very ADHD, you should call me. I'll be okay with that.
Hey, I'm selling.
I have somebody on the desk for that because we don't.
I'm selling a home and the appraisal was due on Friday. Friday came and went. I mean, we've been calling it, but I've never in 15 years not having an appraisal come in on time. And it's my house, so I needed to sell.
Yeah.
So I'm in the kitchen with deep crew. Yeah. Come on. And then over the weekend, and then finally, yesterday morning, I reached out to the lender because I was like, one, I'll reach out to the appraiser. I mean, what do we do now? And so she really got it. It's all good. Like,
Of course, it's on your property.
of course, I'm gonna have to talk with him when you're all done after Friday. Like, whoa.
And I know this is a totally different thing, but you should become friends with appraisers.
Oh, yeah.
100% talk to appraisers before they go out, send them comps, be super.
Yes.
Appraisers are your best friends. And then when you're preparing a home for sale, you could call and say, hey, I'm not really sure if this would be considered a 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom is my concern. And they're happy.
So if I take 1 minute, I have a question. Because I was under the impression as the seller's agent that you don't show up when the appraiser's there, but I've had that before. Where he'll say, oh yeah, the listing agent was there. And I always thought that that was perceived as you trying to influence him, once again, stay out of lawsuit, so I don't show up. Have you ever
I
shown up?
wouldn't think you're allowed to send comps unless they give you permission. You ask first, right? And
What?
then-
I always ask, but I've never had somebody say no.
Ask what?
If you can have comps, send comps, or if I have preemptively sent to me, said, hey, thanks so much, you know, the seller will be gone, the dog will be gone, blah, 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 blah. You know, I usually, one of the things that I like to do is I switch from a Supra to a combo. So I have a reason to call them and say, just in case you didn't see it, we've switched, it's now a combo, this combination is such and such, sellers work, blah, blah, blah. And that gives you a reason to leave a message. I've taken the liberty of sending just the homes that I priced it. I don't know if that's gonna be helpful for you or not. I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job, but just anything you need at all, please let me know.
I love that.
And I've never had anybody, I mean, some people are like, oh my God, that's super helpful. Other people are not, but most people will say, if I have a problem, I'll call you.
Yeah,
And they do.
yeah. All right. How about a round of applause for our panelists? Before you guys bust out of here, please know that in the copy room on the countertops, we have refreshments. Renee went out and got us some goodies. Our next class starts at 12:30, so we have about a 15-minute break. So please go help yourself to refreshments, use the bathroom, get some coffee, and then we'll see you guys back to
Well,
Okay?
camera, how does the situation play out?
Oh,
Zoom room, I'm gonna leave you up.
during this time here.
Zoom room, I'm gonna leave you up, but I'm just going to get the recording stopped. So we have 2 separate recordings. We'll be back on at 12:30.
Hey.
Three.